So you want to shoot competition, a bunch of competition. You want to shoot major in USPSA, but minor for Steel Challenge and PCSL. What if you could? All with one gun. The Bul Armory Spitfire fills that niche very handsomely. Welcome back to the Humble Marksman channel. I'm David, and this is the Bul Armory Spitfire. Look how massive that gun is. They're huge. Open guns are so awesome. This is considered an open gun. It's made for IPSC and USPSA shooting, but it can also be used in Steel Challenge or PCSL. Now, those of you who don't speak competition nerd, I say major and minor, and that doesn't make a lot of sense to you. Major is basically taking 9mm ammunition and making it go about 30% faster. And so the guns have to be built to withstand that. And then minor is just off-the-shelf ammo that you would normally buy. The challenge becomes that because the gun is compensated, and yes, YouTube, this gun is totally stock from the factory. They were made this way. It is a piece of sporting equipment. Is that if you build a gun that only shoots major safely, then you've got a gun that will choke on minor ammunition. Until now. Before we go too much further into it, guys, I do want to give you a disclosure. This gun was provided to me by Bul Armory to create this video for you guys and show you about the Spitfire and my experience with it. To date, I've only shot one match, but it was a major match and probably 4 or 5 training sessions leading up to that match. Now, I will shoot you guys straight on this. I'm not going to pull any punches, and thankfully there's not much to conceal from you guys, and honestly, concealing stuff from you guys doesn't really do me any favors in the long run. But I do want you to be aware of that, so now you know. And before we go any further, I do want to give a shout out and this crisp high five to the dads in the audience. You guys have the most important job in the world, and part of having that job is annoying your kids, wives, and coworkers with irritating jokes such as this one. What do you call a sad cup of coffee? Depresso. This is the Bul Armory Spitfire. You know it's a Spitfire because it says it right there. The Spitfire is a competition gun that sells in the US for just under $5,000. Yes, this is basically the Lamborghini of the gun world. This is an open gun that is built specifically for racing. And it sounds ridiculous to say, and the non-competitors out there won't believe me, but it's actually a pretty fair price for what they're asking based on what is in the gun. So let me break down what's going on with the gun and why it is kind of so special. So this is an open gun, and what an open gun means is that there are basically almost no restrictions on what the gun can be, except for, see this is a mag gauge. The magazine has to be able to lay flat on this gauge and fit within it. And in the United States, that's 171 and 0.25 millimeters. In Europe, that gauge is just 170 millimeters. Since this gun is made in Israel, it is built to the European spec, so the 170 millimeter mags is what it comes with, which is about a 28 round magazine and 9 mil. That's a pretty minor gripe, but I'm going to kind of work my way up the spec and the things that kind of get me the most excited. So moving up from there is the scope mount. This is a frame mounted red dot riser, and the scope mount is modular. Now there are 2 thumb modules that you can put on here. This one has a higher grip, which allows me to get higher up on the grip, and the other one is kind of a lower grip where the thumb rest is further back. It initially came with the lower grip one since that tends to be more popular, but I swapped it for the higher grip one as I'm starting to grip the guns higher. Lefties, of course, would have to just take that off and pretend like it's not there because you can't put a thumb rest over the ejection port. It just doesn't work. The mount will take a RTS or RMR footprint optic, and the RMR is accomplished via an adapter plate that sandwiches between the mount and the optic. Another departure from the old Ultimate Racer guns that I have been competing with is that the grip module is now gray, where previously they were black. But what is more interesting is the fact that the beaver tail or grip safety that is on the Ultimate Racer is now just a grip tang, and there is a steel mainspring housing. But that's less interesting than out of the box. It comes with this tungsten mag rail. You see that beautiful matte gray? That's not paint. That's what color tungsten is out of the box. And this son of a gun weighs over 1 pound, which makes the whole gun weigh about 57 ounces unloaded, which is a super, super heavy gun. Well, why do you like a gun that heavy? Well, with violent 9 major ammo, it's nice to have, but because it puts all the weight of the gun in the heel and makes the nose swing a little bit nicer in transition, not as much over registration on the transitions, and it contributes to the stability of the gun on shot-to-shot stuff. It settles in for aiming at precise shots much nicer as well, so it's generally nicer to shoot. It actually works really well. Now next, moving up to kind of the fit of the gun and the controls, this is my old Ultimate Racer. It's actually my new Ultimate Racer. My old Ultimate Racer we'll talk about in a second. But this gun is shooting in the same division as the Spitfire, and while the guns are pretty much identical in length, they're more or less, the Spitfire is just a little bit shorter if I get the rear plates of the slides lined up. Spitfire's just a little bit shorter, as the comp on the Ultimate Racer is longer. But one thing that you can't see from the camera, and I will try to convince you of, is that the slide to frame fit is absolutely gorgeous on this gun. It rivals anything except for the open guns that are way too tightly fit. Take 3,000 rounds to break in, and then maybe you get 99% reliability. Out of the box, the Spitfire worked. There was no real break-in period, even though technically it is breaking in. The gun just worked out of the box, which for an open gun is a nice feature to have. The trigger on the gun is absolutely insane. It is tuned. You can see that it's basically like clicking a mouse. If you go back and look at my community page on YouTube, you can see a photo of what the trigger pull registers at. I can't tell you in this video because YouTube is weird about that and can demonetize videos for what they perceive to be hair triggers. So I just don't tell you trigger weights anymore in video. Sorry. But if you look at the attention to detail and how the gun is fitted, where the frame, the comp, and the slide all come together, it's just a beautifully uniform gap, and it's the same on the other side as well. That is not easy to do, and they make it look absolutely fantastic. The slide stroke and how the slide moves is just like on glass. There is no binding on the guide rod or the disconnector hitch that is common on double stack guns. It's just like buttery smooth back and forth. And you can really feel it when you get behind it. While my Ultimate Racer is very smooth as well, it's not as tight. Like, there is more play. Let's just listen. I can wiggle the slide on that. I absolutely cannot wiggle the slide. Maybe just a little. It's broken in and shot in a little bit. So the gun compares very favorably against pretty much any gun you could put it next to at a match. So in terms of fit and finish, the gun, in my opinion, compares very favorably to just about any gun you could put it next to at the match. Now, the thing that I think is the coolest about this gun is the fact that you may have noticed that this is the slide, obviously, and it is a commander length slide. That is a 4¼ inch slide. However, the barrel, the rifling actually stops right at the end of the dust cover, at the end of the V4 ports. So the barrel actually is milled out of one big block. Like, the compensator doesn't thread on. That is the barrel. And the rifling, you can't tell, but if you were here in person, you could look down in the ports and you can see the rifling going on underneath them. And then the expansion chambers for the compensator open up. This is really cool for a couple reasons. The big fat part of the barrel acts as a barrel weight, helping kind of keep the lift down, but also it allows us to use a shorter slide, which means when the slide is slinging forward, there's less of the over registration and the gun kind of going down and dipping, and that's observable under the high speed as well. Because as the shorter, lighter slide, it's able to move under minor loads.
It's barely dribbling out of the gun, but it runs. It's like a staple gun. There's like no recoil. It's fantastic.
But it is a lot of fun to shoot with minor loads for sure. So shooting the gun, and I'll start with the accuracy. This is the most accurate gun I have ever shot. Now, there is a qualifier there. You have to use, when you're shooting major ammo, basically hand-loaded ammunition, which almost always, due to the ports and compensator, is going to be jacketed hollow points, which is what I load. Now, you're either going to load between about 1380 to 1500 foot per second, depending if you're shooting 124s or 115s. I do 124s. And when I was validating 0 at 25 yards, I shot the smallest group I have shot with any gun offhand ever. Some of that's due to the fact that the trigger is amazing. Some of that's due to the fact the gun weighs 57 ounces. Some of that's due to the fact that it is jacketed hollow points. But regardless, that's the trim that you're competing with, and I was able to basically make holes touch at 25 yards. And I realized that under match conditions as well. Now, I shot the Space City Challenge in 2024. Basically, I got this gun, I zeroed the optic, and I took it to the range 2 or 3 times to kind of vet my load on it, chrono, do a little bit of light practicing before the match, and then, you know, since then to film some of the video that you've seen here. In the match, there were 2 stages that required a good bit of aiming, and on the difficult shots, I was able to basically stack the holes about a paster width apart, which is pretty awesome.
On the move, baby.
That brings us back to the stability, where it just is confidence inspiring. And when you're trying to shoot at the limit of like speed and control, you really have to have a lot of confidence in the setup that you're running in order to really kind of push the limit. And this gun definitely inspires confidence that I didn't have with my Ultimate Racer. And that's not to say that the Ultimate Racer isn't a great open gun. I'm still keeping this as my backup to the Spitfire, and I got my top finish at Nationals with the Ultimate Racer. It was 83% in number 40, which is really good for me. But I think it did kind of raise the ceiling with how adventurous and aggressive I feel like getting on targets with the gun. The balance of the gun is just more stable, and gun handling with the gun in the match environment was absolutely fine. The massive magwell makes reloads very easy. It's very easy to get the mag button set up where you want it to where you can reach it. The slide stop doesn't really come into play in open. This will be kind of where I go into sort of the negatives, and they're very, very minor negatives on this particular gun. The slide racker is one of those negatives, and that's because it's held in place by this little grub screw, and it works its way loose as you're shooting the gun. It never gets to the point where it wants to, you know, be suicidal and jump off the gun, but you do need a tool to remove it in order to take the gun down for cleaning, which is a little bit annoying. The other gripe that I have about the pistol, and this is more a gripe due to me buying a bunch of primers at the beginning of COVID before they completely vanished, and the primers being of dodgy quality, is the trigger job comes set up so aggressively that it shoots factory ammo no problem, but some of the harder primers that I picked up during COVID wouldn't get ignited by the hammer spring that came in the gun. So I stepped it up a couple steps in hammer spring weight, and it sets off everything no problem. But that's honestly pretty standard fare for a 2011 style pistol. A downside to the gun being as big a pig as it is, and it is notably heavier than even the tungsten magwell on my Ultimate Racer, is that the holster hanger was kind of digging into my thigh at the end of the day. I shot it in 1-day format in the match, and I got like a light bruise on my thigh from the thigh pad just pressing into my leg as I walked, I don't know, 12 miles or whatever it was that day. It was a lot of walking. So in an all-day match format, I'm definitely going to bring a pistol sleeve for the gun and, you know, unbag at make ready and bag it again at unload and show clear, and just not have this big pig hanging off the holster all day, because it is very heavy. As far as reliability is concerned, I can't really tell you how the Spitfire is going to hold up because it's a brand new gun that just came out and I've got like 1,500 rounds through it, not very much at all. But I can tell you how my old guns held up. So this is my new open gun that I've been competing with, and it's got north of 10,000 rounds, something in there. I stopped keeping logs on these things. I just kind of changed the springs at the beginning of the season and the middle of the season, and then, you know, go on about life. So about 10,000 rounds through this. It did have some initial teething issues with some of the ejection on it, but I got the extractor tuned up and it's just fine. This is the original Ultimate Racer that I started competing with, and this is the, hold on, sorry guys, did that wrong. This is the original Ultimate Racer. And this bad boy has over 30,000 rounds on it. It's been blown up 3 times from when I didn't understand how to load 9 major ammunition. The only damage that the gun took was the extractor lost tension every time I had to do it. I had to kind of retension the extractor. I ended up buying an Aftec extractor instead, and everything has been fine on this gun ever since. The only thing that broke on this gun in the entire time that I've had it, for which was 3 years and a bunch of dry fire, was the ambi safety. The ambi leg of the safety broke, you know, its little fork, the lower fork on it broke off, so that the ambi safety did nothing. Like, this safety was just kind of flopping up and down. It wouldn't block the hammer anymore. But the gun has been pretty much bulletproof ever since. The joke is that open guns generally don't work, and what I love to do is when I go to these matches and everybody's gun is choking because they don't clean it or they just do silly stuff to them, is talk about the only gun on the squad that works is the open gun. These guns have been super reliable for me, and honestly, finishing well at matches, just keeping the guns in operation is a big key to doing that, and I expect that the Spitfire is going to take some of that same DNA and do just fine. So I'm really tickled to be shooting the Spitfire for 2024 season and on. If you're at a match that I'm at and you want to check it out, just come say hi. We'll walk over to a safe table and you can mess with it and see what you think. I do think it is a step up over the Ultimate Racer, but I still like the Ultimate Racer. Honestly, it's It's lighter weight, and it honestly is a great value if you consider it's about the least amount of money you can spend to get into open division responsibly. It's an absolutely great gun for that as well.